Good morning, good afternoon, good evening, wherever you are from this part of the world. Welcome to the Symposium Sunday call. Thank you for being here with us. As with the previous calls, we're going to be covering each of the daily dose reports that the analysts have written this past week. There will be a Q&A section at the end. And if you have anything to ask, you can raise your hand or you can feel free to use the chat box. We are recording this, so the full recording will be available here in the server, and there will be a small section uploaded to YouTube as well. So without further ado, I'm going to hand over to Christine for a quick update of what's been happening over this last few weeks, and then we'll go right in from there.
Hello, everyone. Happy Sunday. On the back end with DeFi-Logic, there has been a lot of movement forward, primarily in regards to the daily dose, refining a lot of the reporting, capitalizing on a lot of opportunities that we can do going forward with the reporting as well. The indicator as well has been going through some more review and some more updates in that regard. We are very excited about that. So really building that out. That way the community has a lot of potential once it's released. And those are the main two things. She will mention something about TA Tuesday in a bit. But other than that, those are my main updates for this week.
Awesome. Thank you, Christine. Now, looking forward, the first of our weekly reports is the MMAs. It's the macro analytics that Casaro and myself work on. And this week, past week, we've looked at Bitcoin and the BRC20 potential. So without further ado, I'll hand over to Casaro.
All right, thanks. So basically, we looked into the BRC20. It's still a really new token standard. It's basically like 2 months old at this point. The technology between ERC, BRC20, despite the similarity in name, there's pretty much nothing in common between them. The BRC20, in a way, it functions. It's still fungible, but it's a lot of traits are similar to non-fungible tokens. You can attach text in JSON format to the transaction witness field, stuff like that, and then the market cap it kind of blew up really quick. Just about 2 weeks ago, hit a peak of over 600 million. And then it's already declined pretty far from there. So from there, if you got anything else to share?
Yeah, similar work there. I think because it is so early, it's more of a seems like a real pump and dump. There's people coming on for the quick opportunities, knowing that there'll be new investors coming on board, and maybe those people who aren't that versatile and aware of what's going on in the markets, so sort of preying on that opportunity to make that quick money and dumping on the others. So hopefully we can see some longevity in the future, but at the moment it's not looking too good, especially with the sort of foundation of the Bitcoin network and the speed which they have. So yeah, something to watch, but for now it's not looking too good as well.
Yeah, and it seems like it's something I've seen in the past with other things is something called brand jacking, where they're basically just leveraging the ERC20 name and how well it's known to boost their new product. Basically, that's what it seems like is happening. Pump and dump, like you said.
Yeah, awesome. So with that, if there's anything else that people want to go over, the full report is available in the daily dose. So please feel free to jump in and have a look at that. So thanks for that, Kasaru. Moving forward, looking at the Tuesdays. So we have TA Tuesdays, which normally we have both GeForce and Cryptics. And tomorrow we'll have slightly different. So we're going to have both. We're going to have GeForce as usual. But replacing Cryptics for the week will be Elite Trading. And those of you who've been active in the server the last few weeks will have seen that he's been doing some great work with the penny stocks. So Elite Trading will be joining us to share some charts and an overview of how that works and how he goes about his process. The timing has also changed, so you'll see in the server that the timing is now 7 p.m. MST. So please double check your timings and make sure you're available for that time slot. And hopefully we'll see some of you there. Also on Tuesdays, we have the NiFTy Tuesday, done by our analyst Ambrosia. And working on this week is a follow-on from the previous week, is the tokenomics of the Chikn NFTs. So there's a great write-up there this week. So Bam, if we can have you on and let us know how your report went.
Hey, how's it going, everyone? So we covered another layer of as you said, the tri-tokenomic system. So first week we just rolled out, okay, what are the NFTs and what do they do? So each of these NFTs produces a unique token, and so these tokens make up this tokenomic structure of the game. And so we got into the LP about that too. And so the LP, right now, I basically hadn't been doing the LP for a while. I'd just been focusing on like leveling up my roosters. But since that system is pretty much sustainable now, obviously market conditions have been great. So we're not seeing $8 egg right now, or even a few months ago, it was like 30-cent egg. So I got back into the LP pool because I think there is still a lot of projected value to be earned from that. So I put in like $200 USDC into the egg AVAX LP pool. And if I did my math correctly, let me see if I can share my screen. Okay, here we go.
Lovely.
All right, so right at the top, we'll see the farmlands here, and then this is the reward structure for the farmland. And right here, you'll see I have about 4,000 eggs staked in there, and that's also paired with AVAX too, equal amount of AVAX. So getting about 27, K worm over a 120-day period. So it's about 223, 230 worm per day, which comes out to about like 20 cents. So it's a solid opportunity. And I think there is a lot of projected value to make profit from in the future too. So let me just switch screens back. Okay. So yeah, we cover the tri-tokenomic system, egg, for and what we had was feed. So feed is minted out finally through that farm LP. So there's no new feed being produced. There's really just what they replace feed with, worm now. So whatever is left for feed, to feed your chickens, to increase that in that inflationary way, that inflationary part of the game, is just what's left in remaining circulating supply. So there is potential meme coin possibility with that. I don't see it happening for a while though, because there's still quite a bit of feed left to be burned. But yeah, I mean, it's a complex gaming system, but they just keep adding layers to it, and I think they've done a pretty good job with it so far.
Awesome. Thanks, man. Appreciate you having that report on that. So looking forward onto Wednesdays, we have the WWF Wednesday, which is the weekly wallet or whale wallet findings. This week, Sloth and I did some work on the Uni token, as part of Uni being the token for the Uniswap protocol. Had a look at what the on-chain metrics are doing, how the whales are interacting, what's happening with different exchanges, and how all of that plays in to whether it's looking bearish or bullish. So Sloth, if we could just come on and talk over that report for me, please.
Okay, yeah. So like G said, this week's wallet findings was over the Uni token. And so Uni launched was the end of 2020 when they did their airdrop for holders, basically anybody who had interacted with Uniswap prior to I can't remember what the date was. It was I think back in November or December 2020 had basically received an airdrop of 400 Uni tokens, which I think at the peak was worth about 20 or 30K if you had held it to all-time high. Let me share my screen here and then we can see some of the metrics. Okay, so this just kind of goes over some of the liquidity mining pools, and then also we can see here the community treasury wallet release schedule, and it was released on a 4-year schedule starting back in September 2020. And then the last schedule release is set to hit September of next year. So we've got about 86 million Uni tokens releasing this year, which is about 20% of the total community treasury distribution, and then another 10% of the distribution, which is 43 million Uni tokens, which will be releasing next year. So yeah, we can see the sharper incline in the beginning, obviously, since it's a larger distribution. So since the distribution's kind of tapering off around these levels, that could be a good indicator that there may be less of a dump, just because then there's less tokens circulating on the market, just kind of depending on how people are choosing to use their Uni tokens, if they're locking them in an LP pool or holding them or trading them. And then here we can see the spike in the individual users on Uniswap. So this is looking back from the past about 4 years, and we see a big significant spike just this past month that we hadn't seen in the last 2 years. So that could be a significant indication of possible return to bull market, or just because people are kind of starting to trust the centralized exchanges a lot less, based on the collapse of FTX, Celsius, BlockFi, some other ones, and then here we can see the changes in the token price and volume. Here's the 1-year graph. So we see 1-year outlook at about $291 million in volume, token price at about 4.68. And then to more recent, so I'm not sure why the volume's not showing there, but we see a slight increase in the price. But just looking at the volume indicators, we can see that there's actually a decent reduction in the volume. Another good thing to note is if you look at the volume in November 2022, which is right around the time the FTX collapse happened, we see a huge spike, which is also probably an indication that people were moving their tokens over to the decentralized exchanges such as Uniswap and opting in for the self-custody option as opposed to holding them on the exchanges. And then here's just the 30-day outlook for the token price and volume, and you see a slight decrease and then slight decrease in the overall volume as well. I think that's just kind of the market in general. And then here we see just the weekly trades per DEX. So we see that big spike at the end of last year in November and December, and then it's kind of starting to settle down and taper off. And then here again, we see a pretty significant increase in the token balances on the decentralized exchanges. And then if we look at the amount on the centralized exchanges, there is a very slight decrease, or just a kind of a flat token balance. So once again, kind of alluding to the fact that people are trusting the centralized exchanges a lot less than they were. And then here we just kind of see the top balances. So obviously we see the Uniswap Uni time lock address, and then we see the treasury wallets, and then we see a couple whale wallets here, which we'll talk about in a little bit. And then we can see the increase of the unique addresses for the token with the larger spike beginning of 21 around that May 2021 time period, and then a slight increase too, which also happened around the end of last year. And then obviously we can see here top exchanges is obviously Uniswap, since it's the native utility token of the exchange. And then we actually see some decreases in the past week of tokens on both Coinbase and Binance and a few other exchanges. And then looking at some of the top wallets, so we had seen there there were some whale wallets that we saw that were holding for a pretty significant time. One was in particular was owned by A16Z Andreessen Horowitz, which is a venture capital firm, very well known. So they are currently holding. They have a wallet which currently holds 15 million unique tokens, and at current prices, it's worth $77.5 million. And they've been holding on to these for well over 2 years. And we've seen some similar occurrences as well. There was another one holding 20 million uni tokens worth 124 million, and these were bought back in March of this year. So just two instances where we see kind of the larger whales holding for a longer period of time, which points to further further indication that this is more of a long-term hold and probably, going to be affected by the current current market conditions, and it's definitely something to keep a look at, though.
Thanks for that, Kyle. So looking at looking forward for the next day. So on Thursdays, we have the token audit Thursdays. And this past week, we covered also the BRC20 protocol. This is worked on with both by Trill and Sloth. So on Mondays, we covered the macro analytics, and on this part they covered the audit of the token, how the protocol is working as a whole. So we'll bring them on and see how that report went. So over to you guys.
Yeah, so as you were saying, went over BRC20's token standard. It's was built was actually created by a Twitter user named Domata. But the standard actually came from the Ordinals protocol, which was made by Casey Rodemar, and Domata basically saw that this protocol could be expanded upon to create the BRC20 token standard. And the token, or the how the ordinal protocols work, it's an inscription on the Satoshi, which is basically the smallest measurement of Bitcoin. And this inscription gives the Satoshi meaning that's worth trading. And that's basically how we have the tradable BRC20 tokens like Pepe, Meme, 40, things like that. I'm actually going to share my screen really quickly and just show what that inscription looks like. So this is what the ordinal inscription looks like. As you can see here, it's just certain code that's written into Bitcoin that was allowed via the Taproot upgrade, but just a few how do I want to say it? Via a few variables like the token name, the maximum supply limit. From this, people can then mint the token, and that's why essentially it's kind of regarded as a meme coin standard because easily, mintable, and from this, people are able to move money. But this is all it takes to create a BRC20 token. You do have to have a Bitcoin node, but with the Bitcoin node and the ability to write that code, you can create a BRC20 token. But this token, like I said, was created from the Ordinals protocol, with Casey Rodemar figured out how to create deploy this type of token, and Umada basically built upon that and created the BRC20 standard. Do you have any more comments, Slav?
Yeah, I mean, you pretty much touched on that. I mean, there's not really a whole lot to it. It's basically just like a JSON file with some data that's attached to individual Satoshis on the Bitcoin base chain. But it's funny though, because this was like it's not really an exploit, but basically kind of a workaround they found within the Taproot upgrade, which Taproot actually was an upgrade that went live, I think it was about 2 years back, November 2021. And so this was upgrade that basically improved on to make Bitcoin faster and more efficient, and allowed multiple signatures and transactions to be batched together, which just made verifying the transactions faster. And so the Taproot upgrade is actually supposed to be compatible with smart contracts. So I thought it was kind of funny when this token standard came along. I'm not really sure why they chose to do this as opposed to just implementing smart contracts, which should be available given the Taproot upgrade. So yeah, I feel like this is just kind of like a temporary hype deal, but who knows? It's definitely an interesting thing to see in the space.
Awesome. Thanks, Trill. Thanks, Sloth. Appreciate that. Now, looking forward, on Fridays, we have the FA Friday. We have Pepe and O'Breezy covering the fundamental analysis, the fundamental analytics. And this week, it was a continuation on the coverage from the Federal Reserve and the Bank of England. So, Pepe, over to you.
Yep. So O'Breezy won't be here today. It's him and his wife's anniversary. So congrats on that. He made it through so far. But yeah, this week it's basically the last installment in a 3-part series, kind of comparing and contrasting BOE, Bank of England, with the Federal Reserve and U.S. Treasury, and a little bit of the differences between. So it's important to research just in a basic sense, because currency generation is of critical importance and understanding in the society and how the economy functions. And so basically the U.S. Federal Reserve and BOE both practice fractional reserve banking. And just in a very basic sense, for, like a high school student can understand what fractional banking is, which I'm sure most of us know here, is that you take a $1,000 deposit, and if the reserve requirement is 10%, which it is not, But if it is 10%, this allows the bank to lend out $900 and hold $100 in its reserve, so that they can meet requests for withdrawals and things like that, and still make money. Because as we've gone over before, realistically, the way money is made is through lending, generally speaking, overwhelmingly speaking, I would say. So, I mean, there's a divergence between the two in terms of mostly regulatory supervision, where the Fed Reserve sets reserve requirements, but the BOE does not impose a formal reserve requirement. And that is actually not completely true, because as of March 26, 2020, under Donald Trump, they changed the reserve requirement for the Federal Reserve. So it now meets the same, and actually I can show you from the Federal Reserve website. Share my screen. So as of, it was announced on the 15th of March, and it went into effect on the 26th of March, 2020, and they reduced the reserve requirement ratios to 0%. Prior to that, there was kind of like I don't know how you would say it, like a tiered system or sliding scale, where there would be a ratio of 3% at a certain low reserve tranche, which basically is like a lower tier requirement. And then as it's scaled up in terms of the commercial bank reserves, then there's a requirement of 10%. And prior to both of those, there was still a reserve requirement ratio of 0%, right? So the idea that a lot of people have, even up until recently, most people didn't know, and probably still don't know, that Fed Reserve is fractional banking with, or the requirements are 0, just like Bank of England. So those are, I think, the most important points from the research. It's a lot more in depth in the Daily Dose, the write-up, and the comparison in terms of BOE versus Fed Reserve. And I think the only thing that I want to point out is that the U.S. Treasury also has a hand in this, but they mostly they're more so in charge of fiscal policy and managing the country's finances and creating the currency, whereas the monetary policy itself, regulation of financial institutions and so-called maintaining financial stability is under the Federal Reserve's, we could say, jurisdiction or responsibilities. I think that's pretty much it for this section this week.
Cool. Thanks, Pepe. Really insightful there. And I think there's a lot of assumptions that would have been quelled there as well. So great work from yourselves. Moving forward, in the last report of the week, we have Stock Saturdays. So we have GeForce going over the S&P and various analytics on what's been happening throughout the week in terms of the stock market. So GeForce, over to you.
Thank you, G. Basically, this last week, we finally had some movement in the S&P 500 and the rest of the markets. The markets have been flat since the beginning of March. I posted some things last night that showed that. I'll try and get my screen up here as well. But what's happening is that we're getting some announcements coming in, and everything is predicated on the debt ceiling, whether the debt ceiling is going to be raised or if it's not going to be raised. So everybody was saying that negotiations were good this week until on Friday. The Republicans walked away from the White House staff that's negotiating for the Democrats, basically because they felt that the White House wasn't taking this any seriously at all. So what happened is that the market declined a little bit on Friday. It went from the upper band, and I'll try and get this weekly out to you guys here in a second. But it went down, not as bad as it should have. With the news that's going on, it probably should have went a lot worse. So everything right now is predicated on the debt ceiling. I'd hate to say that because any market that's just news driven has no direction, and that is a problem. So let me see if I can get my screen up here real quick. It should be coming on here in a second, and it'll show a bounce exactly off of the upper Bollinger Band. So right here, if you guys can see this, I think you can. I'll increase it just a little bit more. This week we bounced around, and then on Thursday we had a great movement up because of everybody's thinking the debt ceiling is going to work. So Wednesday, Thursday was great, and then got up to the upper Bollinger Band right here, and then Friday it pulled back from that, going above the 2 standard deviation and closed below the 2 standard deviation. So we finally have some movement, thank God. You can see that everything's been trading sideways on this upper line here, which is the upper channel. Things are working. So if you look at the daily dose, Stock Saturdays, you'll see that this week, the weekly options, I do an option every day. We hit 4 out of 5. Most of those options were 2x all the way to 3x on those options, and 4 out of 5 isn't bad. So we had a good week. The previous 2 weeks weren't that great, I'll be honest with you, but this week it popped up because we had some movement. So we'll look forward to next week and see what kind of news we have.
We're moving forward then. I think that was most of what GeForce wanted to cover. So thank you to everyone and all the analysts and the partners for their work in this week's reports. Some great information there, some actionable steps that we can take on that. Looking forward then, we will open the floor up for some Q&A. If you want to jump on, have some questions, you feel free to raise your hand. We can invite you onto stage, or you can use the chat on the side as well. So I'll hand over to Christine for the Q&A.
Definitely. Thank you, G. So for the Q&A, we're going to try and be a little bit more organized with it. What we would like to do is go ahead and walk through what our daily dose lineup is. And then if anybody has any questions per the reporting or any additional insights they want to pop on and add, or drop in the chat, if you have anything, we'll go ahead and mention it kind of sectored out. And we'll start with the MMA Mondays. And G, I may need your help with bringing people up on stage and taking them back down. I don't think I have that capability.
Sure.
But we'll start with Monday, if you don't mind. I do have a couple questions to get us started, and then if anybody has any additional ones, they can raise their hand, and G will pull you up on stage. All right, Kasaro, to start us off for the MMA Monday, I did have a question. So I noticed in the reporting, you mentioned the increased minting and transfer of the BRC20 tokens, and how it's congesting the just congestion to Bitcoin overall, and then also leading to significantly higher transaction fees, compared to Ethereum, which we know is already wild. So my first question is, do you think that these higher transaction fees are temporary? Or do you think it will become a major issue like it is on Ethereum? And Ethereum's been trying to fight that for some time now. So do you think they're going to hit that same kind of bottleneck?
No, I think the increase was definitely correlated, from what I could tell, with the BRC spike. It was a really quick spike, like I said, about I think it was about 3 weeks ago, maybe a month ago at this point. It went all the way up to 600 million. You get 14,000 BRC tokens already in 2 months. So there's transactions going on everywhere across Bitcoin network. So we're already seeing the decline in the BRC token standard. So it seems like it's just going to be a temporary issue.
Well, that's nice to hear because I know everybody was still screaming about Ethereum.
Yeah.
I'm one of them. So, and that kind of leads me to my second question was, the BRC tokens, they can be quite incompatible with traditional wallets like MetaMask. I use MetaMask, but do you think, are there alternative wallets available? I know there are, but do you have maybe any recommendations of one that's been, out for longer or that has a better track record?
I'm not sure specifically which ones. Like, I don't personally purchase BRC tokens or even Bitcoin off of centralized exchanges. So I just know that, the vast majority of people in crypto that are using platforms beyond Bitcoin, they already have a MetaMask. So that particular issue doesn't bode well for BRC20 token longevity. But yeah, unfortunately, I personally don't have any recommendations in that way.
Well, if anybody does, definitely drop it into the chat. I'm very curious about that, and I may actually dive in because I like all my stuff. I don't like to leave things on exchanges, and I do like my things in, hard wallets. So I might dive into that a little bit more and see if I can drop that into the community later once I find out.
Yeah, that'd be good to know.
So Bambrosia dropped in and he said Core Wallet is one that he's been hearing about lately. Thanks, Bambrosia. I'm going to definitely look that one up. All right, I'm going to do a shout out to the community. If anybody has any questions, raise your hand. If not, we'll move on to NiFTy Tuesday. And crowd is quiet, so thanks, Kazaro. And Bambrosia, I've got a couple questions for you to get us started.
Awesome. Fire away.
Okay, so I really liked the write-up. I'm kind of getting egged on to this Chikn project, but I did see that the Chikn NFT, they went to the Avalanche Summit. And I know a lot of projects are moving to Polygon, for example, but it seems like Chickens are staying on AVAX. They seem pretty firm on that. I know they're the market lead on AVAX right now, I believe. But what do you think? Do you think AVAX is going to hold up for them, or do you think they might be revisiting that?
Yeah, so I think that AVAX, they're not going to want to go anywhere else, but they also realize that, even being the number one NFT project for the last year and a half on AVAX with $30+ million in volume generated, they still realize that's nowhere near Ethereum or even Polygon, because I think Polygon does that in a week. So don't quote me on those exact numbers. So they're realizing, hey, we want to really, as they, in their own words, I'm not paraphrasing this, they said we want to take over the world. They're set on world domination. So they really have lofty but practical dreams for the project. And one of the ways that they've talked about since launching the project back in December of 21 was, they want to adopt multi-chain interoperability because they see that as really being the only way to be able to expand and hold a stable user base, because we see what happened with Krabata. They didn't have the user base to expand to their newly launched subnet, so the volume just wasn't there to support that structure. So seeing that happen, Chikn has really said, okay, so we're going to expand our user base. We're going to, be able to bring other communities over to Avalanche and, spread the word.
Oh man, I had almost forgot about Krabata. It's funny. Time flies in crypto. I've always been a fan of AVAX, so I'm really, I'm excited to see them grow exponentially on the platform. And Serrano dropped in and said Unisat as well. I'm not familiar with that actually. Oh, for the BRC20 wallets. Okay, that rolls back to the previous one. So I did have a question because I think I know you're definitely into the project. I heard there were a few juicy announcements that came up during the AVAX summit. One about Gravy. Any news on Gravy?
Okay, so what they're doing is Gravy is their lead designer. They call him like the head of the JPEGs. So he's the lead designer, and he's been remaking all of the Chikn NFTs. He started with the Chikn NFTs, the PFPs. He's been restylizing as Chikn is kind of streamlining and maturing their brand, or maybe immaturing the brand because they want it to be more accessible to a wider user base. So they're going with a cartoon style, which they're building a game. They want it to be easier represented, and to do that with a photorealistic JPEG, they said was just a little too difficult. So what they're doing is creating a cartoon version, and we've already seen some gameplay video of the new cockfighting, and it looks pretty awesome. So what they're doing is doing all the chickens, and we don't know exactly how that's going to go. They're going to do the roosters too, but we don't know what the launch is going to look like. If it's going to be they're going to drop the newly redesigned PFP of your own chicken that you hold to native holders, and then if you are on a Polygon network, you can get a chicken in the new stylized version that they're doing. That's what I'm thinking they're going to do, but it could be different.
I'm gonna have a hard time staying out of this project. This is so interesting. Yeah. And Pepe, I was gonna say, Pepe, did you have a question?
Yeah, when you showed your screen earlier, I saw that there was something on the Chikn game for X Flesh, which is Mad Skulls, right?
Right. Yeah. So they were running for a little while dual rewards in their LP pool. So you could earn X Flesh, which is just a transferable token. It doesn't mean you can sell it, but you can still transfer it to your wallet. And so they were offering you to be able to earn Flesh, which is one of the native in-game tokens for Mad Skulls, with no liquidity yet, but they are adding that in the future. And you could earn Worm as well. That was one of the dual rewards.
So do they still offer those rewards?
So it's been fully minted out, but they are going to be releasing another allotment of that in the future, I believe.
Nice.
Yeah. So I think they did a 10 million to start, and they will release another 10 million at another time.
Okay, cool. Yeah. That's pretty much all I had. I just noticed that on the screen, and I was like,
cool.
Maybe,
No, go ahead.
Maybe an opportunity for people that are in Mad Skulls or whatever to scoop up some chicken. What do you need to get that X Flesh? You need an actual chicken, or?
Okay, so to get the X Flesh, yeah, I'm glad you're bringing this up because Mad Skulls, I didn't really want to get into Mad Skulls, just yet because we're just doing like the first month of Chikn. So I was going to try and lay down all the basics of Chikn, but now that we're onto it, Mad Skulls is a partnership program that was launched through Chikn's NFT artist developer launchpad called the Ignite Partnership Project, where it's a launchpad for companies who want to either have assistance launching an NFT project or gamifying an NFT mint, etc. They will have full stack dev support, and I'm not sure if they own a bit of equity with that, but they basically use the Chikn ecosystem as a host to launch these products in a collaborative way. So Mad Skulls was one of the main projects that they did that with through the LP Dual Rewards program of X Flesh and Worm. So what they did was offer that entry. You can still earn X Flesh without owning a Chikn NFT, or even, well, I guess you would have to own a Farmland NFT, but you wouldn't have to own a Mad Skulls. But you can also, in Mad Skulls, they launched the Chikn portal where you can earn worm. So all you have to do is stake a great Mad Skulls. They kind of did the reverse. So for regular staking in Mad Skulls, you would want to stake the highest rarity to earn at most 80 flesh per staked skull. But for the Chikn portals, you want to stake the lowest rarity because they wanted it to be a lower entry point. So that would be 40 flesh per skull staked.
So it sounds like what they're doing is akin to like Olympus, where they have, what is it, like their incubator platform for other projects?
Right. Yeah. Yeah. Something like that. A few other, a few of these dexes, they do launch pads. They call them like Ignite projects too, where they kind of help you launch your project, which is a great idea.
Yeah, for sure. And then now you're a councilman on what is it, the small frogs?
Small frogs, man. Yeah. And also Mad Skulls, they have their own partnership or launch pad that they're working on too. But yeah, I just was lucky enough to catch this mint, this small frogs mint. So I minted 3 for 3 AVAX just like 2-3 days ago, and later that day it rose up to like 49 AVAX. And it's the #1 project on JPEGs in volume. I think they made over like 750 AVAX in volume the first like day or two. So yeah, it was pretty sweet. So I'm now in the council, and we're forming a DAO, and we're working on rolling out new updates, probably working towards gamifying the system and doing a revenue share for OG frog holders, small frog holders. So we have a lot in the pipeline. They move fast, and there's a lot of competent people in the small frogs team. So pretty excited about it.
Nice. Yeah, dude, the analytics on JPEGs is pretty wild for that project.
Yeah.
The floor price is still over 20 AVAX.
It
It's
is,
crazy.
yeah. And they're working on figuring out how can we up that? And they do know that is quite a high floor price for most people to make, but we're happy with it. And you'd rather have a high floor price than a low floor price, because in the future, you might be able to launch another NFT that's integral to a system and a game within that program. Nothing set in stone yet, but that could be at a lower price point. So I'll certainly have the alpha for you guys when that happens.
That's awesome. It sounds like small frogs may not stay small forever.
Right.
Great. Well, that was all my questions. And hopefully maybe later on down the line we can look at or maybe a Mad Skulls write-up will happen. I'm very curious about that. I think I have a Mad Skulls NFT hanging around in one of my wallets. And if nobody else, Sloth. G, can you bring Sloth up? Awesome. So we'll go ahead and move on to the Wallet Finding Wednesdays. And for the Wallet Finding Wednesdays, great review that you spoke about earlier. I did have a question though, because I'm still kind of new to this, and your write-ups have been great to kind of get me caught up and expand my knowledge on this. But I did notice that in your write-up, you said the decreasing annual distribution could potentially create a sense of scarcity over time, which makes sense to me. And I did hear that you said you noticed less of a dump. So, but I'm still curious, as I guess this combination seems like it might be highly problematic with the distribution strategy of the uni community treasury. So, with this kind of decreasing annual distribution over time, what impact do you think that might happen, I guess, with the token's value and just normal investor demand? Do you think it will have an impact, or is it just something that we're kind of seeing right now?
Yeah, I mean that was the original allocation plan, was to allocate 60% of the tokens of the 1 billion uni token. So 600 million uni was allocated for the community members, and it was put on a 4-year release schedule with 40% of the distribution happening the first year, and then each sequential year decreasing by an additional 10%. So the second year we had 30% distribution, and then this year we see 20% distribution, and then the final year, which is next year, we'll see 10% of that distribution happening. But yeah, so this is basically just, I mean, yeah, more tokens are being unlocked, but less over time. So I think in the long run, it'll, like I said, create more scarcity, because yeah, there might be some temporary inflation, but it'll eventually taper off, and those who want to participate in the uni governance, or just be a part of the LP pools, will want to hold on to those tokens.
Okay, that could definitely be a positive then. Still wrapping my head around that a little bit. And I don't see any other questions kind of popping up in the chat on that. I thought there might be. Oh, hold on one second. Looks like Trill might be coming up, maybe. There you are.
I didn't have a question. No, I was just if anyone had questions for the Thursday.
Oh, okay. That sounds good. I don't see any questions that popped up. Thank you so much, Sloth, for your input. And I look forward to your write-ups, as I'm still kind of learning. I'm learning that daily dose write-up for sure. And I did have a question for you, Trill, in regards to the token audit. We're seeing like I think you said their market capitalization exceeded like 600 million. And we're seeing tokens like the Pepe token, meme tokens, really kind of pop onto the scene. But I'm wondering, we are noticing some limitations in the inability to distribute tokens. The one example was the high block space consumption of the JSON token. Do you think that kind of these limitations, it kind of rolls off? I'm kind of on a limitation thing, but do you think these will, affect growth and adoption going forward with the competitiveness of the BRC20 tokens?
Yeah, I think the limitations will like affect the competitiveness, because, I guess like as popular as it was during that time, however many people transacted with it, during whatever time, but it ended up, causing enough congestion that Binance actually temporarily disabled withdrawals of Bitcoin, because the network was just too congested from BRC20 transactions. So, if a centralized exchange takes it upon themselves to stop the withdrawing of transactions, because the network just gets congested because of a newer token. I think that's definitely gonna set some limitations going forward, but it can be. So like I say, it's a current limitation. It may not be a future limitation, but at this point in time, it's definitely something that will affect its adoption. And at this point in time, it's mostly associated with meme coins, so it's not necessarily looked at as um, a long-term investment vehicle at this point in time.
So people might just go forward and use it anyways, and just act as if it's normal, and just see how it goes along, versus kind of shying away until they see how it works out. I feel like that's in crypto. It's there's people that just use it no matter what, and then others kind of wait and pause and see. But Pepe, so I see you popped on. Did you have a question or comment?
Yeah, more of like a comment. I saw that I think like some conspiratorial thinking people on Twitter were saying that the way to take down a decentralized, I guess, coin like Bitcoin or any other coin for that matter would be to, well, you can't do like a 51% attack. It's just not financial. It doesn't financially make sense, right? But you could create something like this that congests the network and makes it completely unusable. That's like one of my gripes with Ethereum, right? Where it's like it's not really usable. It's old tech, been around for too long. And so all they have to do is just devise ways, they being, malicious actors, devise ways to bring the network down so that it's unusable to drive traffic to other asset classes, basically.
Ambrosia commented, coincidence? I think not.
Yeah, I mean, I just don't see it as like, it's just a meme, it's like a we're building meme type thing. And then it's just going to have some hype and it'll probably die out because it's not usable, and unless Ethereum fixes its problems, it's not going to be usable either. Yeah, it has a lot of right now it's most used, but that doesn't mean that in the long term that it won't get outpaced. I think it was Skylar that said something about that in the server. Him and I were having a conversation, and he was saying that it has it was like first to market, but first to market only matters if the product is usable, right? Product or service is usable, and Ethereum's not usable. And if that happens with Bitcoin, it's not going to be usable either, right? So, like, I don't know. That's just my thoughts on it.
Seems like everybody might be in agreement with you on that one. I was going to say, I don't see any other questions coming up for Token Audit Thursday, but I do want to roll in. Hey, don't go back in the crowd, Pepe, get back up here. I do have a question for FA Friday. So I know last week we had some great discussions around the FA Friday. So if anybody wants to pop up, feel free to. The one thing that kind of stuck out with the write-up that I had a question on was, given the divergent legal frameworks and the mandates that are very specific of the Federal Reserve and the BOE, are there, or do you think there are any sectors or industries that could really experience kind of some significant impacts based on these differences?
I mean, yeah, I think that. Well, first I'll address the point from last week where I think that Obrizi was right. I pushed back on him a bit, and he was just like, "Yeah, I didn't articulate my point very well earlier." But I think he was actually right in saying what he said. In that, if I recall correctly, it was something about like the issues that GBP and Bank of England are having. Crypto is a way for people to retain value. If not necessarily, like I was thinking more like the long term, and I was like, yeah, that's a meme, that's bullshit, right? But like he does have a point in the short term. So like in terms of tradable proxies that you could use, they use crypto, to get out of these probably more like short-term problems, which is why when you see the banks fail, you'll see value moving into, like a pump on Bitcoin mostly, maybe not so much Ethereum as G-Force noted. But yeah, I mean, it's a short-term way to get to hedge risk in these areas. I think more directly to your question that, these issues with Bank of England, and potentially if something like that is reflected in the United States, I think definitely like interest rates, right? The increase of interest rates that'll immediately impact. Well, maybe not immediately, but it'll directly impact real estate and housing market, right? in terms of the mortgage rates and housing affordability. So we wrote up a while ago about the housing issues that we're seeing in the United States, right? And it hasn't fully, corrected yet as much as we think it will. But I mean, I just don't see how it can't go down. And this is just speaking to more fundamental macro issues that will impact that. So I think that's like a main one, right? Yeah, I think that's the main ones. I was talking with GeForce earlier, and he was, we're trying to make these calls and the research a little bit more actionable, or a lot more actionable, actually. So we're going to start evaluating, something like this, like how do you capitalize on this opportunity with Bank of England? Well, obviously, like Forex markets, as GeForce said, but he also brought up the fact that certain ETFs, they don't necessarily correlate directly. So something like that could be impacted by it. The bond market as well, but I don't know how much I would dabble in that. I think it would be easier to capitalize on an opportunity like this in the Forex market, but I think as Serrano mentioned a while ago, or Serrano, as Space Cowboy said that one time. I think he was mentioning in like a different conversation about how over leveraged Forex is, right? So I wouldn't bet all my dollars into BOE issues, messing with GBP like that. But if you could capture something like this, I think Forex would probably be the best opportunity, and just hedge your risk in terms of long-term real estate and housing investments. That's pretty much it. Hopefully that was a direct answer to the question.
Definitely. And I really, really liked the housing write-up. I feel like you guys could even round back to that and do another one that was very insightful and gave some good outlook. So if anybody has yet to read that one, definitely pop into the Daily Dose and give that one a read. I thought that was very interesting, and I think it's going to kind of play out throughout these different variables going forward that we see within your write-ups for FA Friday.
Yeah, and on that too, I mean, something that I think people should take into account is the fact that, as in my interpretation, in my assessment, that, and I think it's generally accepted that like the housing market trails other markets. So that's kind of also why I'm saying for myself, I don't really see crypto coming back. It could, like John is kind of speculating, we might get a pump out of it, maybe in the short term, which I kind of see in other ways as well, just because of the stock market, and there is a correlation there. But I think in a even more macro picture, I don't think that we're going to see another like actual bull run in crypto until after the housing market correction is realized. You know what I mean? It just doesn't make any sense to me why we would just keep going up when there's, I feel like, a lot of issues that still are unresolved all over the world, but mostly in the West. So that's kind of my thoughts on that. So yeah, maybe we will run another assessment on the housing market, maybe just a follow up or something like that. I know next week we're working on something different, and that'll be another 3-part series focused on the debt ceiling and stuff like that, so that people understand it from an educational standpoint. And we'll try to figure out some tradable proxies that could potentially capitalize on that opportunity.
That would be a great addition. I like the sounds of that. Wonderful. So I look forward to that, definitely. So some additional things coming into the Daily Dose, which will be good to see. And that seems to round out kind of all the Q&A. And I see John has his hand up.
This last one, Stock Saturday. Are we doing that?
I actually didn't have any questions. I thought John covered everything really, really well. It was the one part I didn't have any questions, but I may have some by TA Tuesday. So watch out, John. I usually always have a question or two. And I will be in the TA Tuesday call coming up this Tuesday.
Sounds good.
Awesome. Well, thanks for that,
And
Christine.
back to you,
Great Q&A
G.
there.
Thank you.
Wonderful. So again, big thank you for everyone for being here. If there are any final questions or concerns or anything you guys want to add, please feel free to raise your hands now or jump in the chat. It's been another great call. Just gone over the 1 hour mark today. So a big thank you for everyone for your time, for attending, for listening in, for taking part with all the questions and everything else in between. If you haven't already, make sure you check out the Daily Dose. The articles have all the full information. Today was only a quick update and snippet. If you give it a few hours, hopefully Kasara will throw in the link for an update for the full video, and then we'll also have a YouTube link as well for a quick run up of information. So we'll leave it with that, and hopefully see you all same time, same place next week. Thank you very much. Good night. God bless.